edition of Inside the Capitol. I'm Jason Adkins, Executive Director of the Minnesota Catholic Conference.
And I'm Maggie Hangy. I'm a Policy Associate here at the Minnesota Catholic Conference.
It was another busy week at the Capitol, most notable for the presence of Minnesota's Catholic bishops. Every year, the bishops collectively as a group visit the state capitol to talk to the governor, the lieutenant governor, legislative leaders in both parties, and then we sent them out to speak to legislators specifically in their diocese. So it's a really busy day. They meet with a lot of elected officials, but elected officials are very grateful for their presence, to hear from them and their perspectives, what's going on in their diocese, what are the challenges that the people of God are facing, and how can the Catholic Church contribute to the common good in our state.
Yeah, it was a great day with the bishops advocating at the Capitol with their legislators. As Jason said, each bishop had probably at least 10 or so meetings. Some of those were with the group, some of those were individual, and talking about a wide variety of issues. So each bishop, like Jason said, met with different legislators in their diocese, but then also with leadership. And one of the goals of those is just to make connections, as we do all the time at the Capitol. We're there to build relationships, to make connections. And the Minnesota Catholic Conference is really the conference of bishops, and so they're there to make their presence known. And it's such a positive day. We hear so many good things from our legislators on that day and for weeks to come about their visits and encounters with our bishops.
And the church calls all of us to be faithful citizens. What does that mean? One of the practical ways it is to be involved in public policy questions. We have a government of, by, and for the people. We need the participation of citizens in that process. And the church calls us to be faithful citizens, bringing the principles of Catholic social teaching and gospel values to bear on these tough public policy questions. But if the bishops are asking us to be faithful citizens, they have to model faithful citizenship themselves. And so they make an effort throughout the year to gather collectively with state leaders to talk about important issues. Many of them will do individualized meetings throughout the legislative session and throughout the year, and that's really, really important. But ultimately, their responsibility is to form consciences for faithful citizenship, to give the people of God principles to use to form public policy, to encourage them, to pray for them, and to give them the tools they need to do that effectively. But one of those things is just modeling faithful citizenship themselves. What are some of the issues, Maggie, that the bishops spoke about with legislators?
Yeah, we kept our issues pretty succinct this year. There's some big key issues up on the radar. One of them is, we've talked about this for a few weeks now, the lack of a religious exemption in the Minnesota Human Rights Act related to gender identity and expression. So they talked about that. They brought up sports gambling. They brought up the Equal Rights Amendment and physicians-assisted suicide and other key issues like that, just to bring what we're really seeing as frontline issues to our elected officials. There were some hard conversations that had to be had, a lot of really good conversations around these issues, really just to bring the church's voice into the public arena and say, here's what we're experiencing and facing.
It was a really great opportunity, again, to build common ground for the common good, and that's one of our mantras. So inevitably, we're going to find issues on which we disagree with people in both parties, but it's always important to start those conversations out first by talking about ways in which we're building common ground for the common good, and that was really a hallmark of all of our meetings with legislators and the governor. So really productive day of conversations. It's something that we love doing every year. It's a little bit like the Minnesota Catholic Conference Super Bowl. So on one level, we're excited to have it behind us, but it's really going to propel us forward as we go toward the end of session.
Yeah, the bishops love being there, and there's plenty of people around the Capitol all the time, constituents and other groups, and so it's great to see the bishops be able to encounter people from their diocese in the people's house at the Capitol. So it's just a really great day all around. We also wanted you to hear directly from the bishops about their day and what they experienced at the Capitol and who they met with.
I'm Archbishop Bernard Hebda, the Archbishop of St. Paul, Minneapolis.
I'm Bishop Andrew Cousins. I'm the Bishop of the Diocese of Crookston in northwestern Minnesota.
Bishop Joseph Williams, Auxiliary Bishop here, St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Hello, I'm Bishop Patrick Neary, the Diocese of St. Cloud in central Minnesota.
Hello, I'm Bishop Daniel Felton, and I'm from the Diocese of Duluth.
We're at the Capitol today because we really believe it's important to enter into a relationship with those who are creating laws for us so that we can influence them for the common good. And building those relationships, having difficult conversations is really important in order to make changes in our society so that we can actually develop a civilization that flourishes.
So there are a number of areas that I was able to discuss along with all of the other bishops from the state of Minnesota with our legislators today. Obviously, one of them is physician-assisted suicide, as we very much voiced our concerns and that we are not in favor of that. We are finding here at the Capitol that people are asking some very good questions, because there are some countries that have gone before us that have actually provided for assisted suicide. We're now raising some very, very serious concerns. So we tried to bring those concerns to the legislators today that are even considering this bill. We don't want to see it on the floor, and we certainly don't want to see it implemented within the society in our dioceses and throughout the state of Minnesota.
We've recently come to be aware of some great resistance in our state to including in our human rights legislation a religious exemption that would enable not only Catholics but people of any stripe of faith to be able to share their faith as they desire, be true to their faith, but most especially in the way in which we're able to run our internal institutions, how it is that we staff our schools, how it is that we staff our parishes. And so we think it's really significant for us that our rights as Catholics, as people of faith, as enshrined in the United States Constitution and up until recently here in the laws of Minnesota, would also be reflected in this Human Rights Amendment as well, and this Human Rights Act. So we want to make sure that we're able to be faithful to those principles that are at our very core. We can't be condemned to silence. We have to be willing to, we have to be able to share our faith, and most especially in the way that we pass it on to our brothers and sisters, most especially our children. Certainly that's going to be significant not only in that human rights legislation, but also in the so-called Equal Rights Amendment that's being proposed for our state. So in some ways, those two things are related. As I was mentioning, we've always had protected in this state the right to practice our faith. We call that the religious exemption. So even when there's other legislation that might be contrary to what we believe, that exemption helps us to be able to coexist with people who think differently than we do. And as the legislation that was proposed on human rights, but then also the proposed Equal Rights Amendment would really place that in jeopardy and really make it difficult for us to be true to who we are as Catholic Christians.
I think the most important thing in terms of faithful citizenship is to really be aware of the issues before the legislature that really have a significant impact on the common good. And so I think that the main thing is just to inform yourself, read articles, get online, and even look at the Minnesota Catholic Conference website and just find out what are the key issues that I can inform myself about and inform my family and my friends. One of the senators I just met with in my diocese of St. Cloud had a town hall meeting at a Catholic parish, and he's not Catholic, but he said, what a great exchange. So I think the other thing is contact with your legislators, with representatives and senators from your district, really to reach out to them, certainly through email or other forms of communication, and even look for opportunities to meet them, maybe have them come to your parish, and just have question and answer. But I think that we need more people of faith as faithful citizens to really take on that responsibility that as a concerned citizen, I'm going to voice on behalf of everyone what I feel are important issues with those in leadership to make sure that we're really upholding human principles and values that flow from our faith. And so I think there are multiple ways to really be a responsible citizen, but at least inform yourself and take the action you can yourself to be in contact with anyone you know from your district who's in leadership here at the state capitol.
Yeah, faithful citizenship means that I have a role to play in the citizenship of our government, and I have a role to play to help influence the common good. And That happens at the grassroots level in my city, it happens in my parish and in my school, but it also happens at the state level and even at the national level. I need to be informed about what's going on. There are very important issues like religious liberty and physician-assisted suicide that are affecting our state today. And faithful citizens stay engaged so that we can try to make a difference.
Right. The Gospel of John states that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We believe that our faith, the Word we believe, needs to become flesh in the world in which we live. And it's just been a privilege to be with my brother bishops and to make sure that happens. Faith is not divorced from culture, from society, from politics, but of course, it's not the bishops, according to our faith, that have the first role in this. It's the layperson. In many ways, Vatican II said the world is the sanctuary of the layperson. Laypersons have rights in the world that the bishops don't, just like we have rights in the church and the sanctuary, you might say, that laypersons don't. So we really do encourage all of the baptized to care about the public policy, to care by voting, by promoting the common good where you are, and fighting for a place at the table. This is, I think, what we come away with today is that religious liberty matters. Just we spent a good portion of our day wanting to defend that liberty and to make sure that that's part of the rich pluralism that we enjoy here in the state of Minnesota.
What I've enjoyed most this day is being with my brother bishops and seeing the way in which God has really blessed us as a state with men who are very distinct, very different, but have complementary gifts. As we've gone into some rather difficult discussions, we've always had each other's back, and we've been able to supplement the information that's being presented in a way that makes me marvel. We have such a great God, but it was not only, I think, effective for us to be able to work together, but we had a really good time together as well. I'm also amazed at how many people my brother bishops know. I think all of us ran into dozens of people at the Capitol, which just gives you some sense for how the church is really involved in society as well. But it was a lot of fun.
Another key issue that we're watching is physician-assisted suicide, and unfortunately that bill continues to get hearings in the House. Most recently at a hearing in House Public Safety Committee, it was passed out of committee and then moved forward to the House Judiciary Committee. So we really need to be attentive as we head toward legislative deadlines about what's going on with the assisted suicide legalization bill. That's House File 1930, and it's important that people in the pew, parishes, they access the resources at mncatholic.org/PAS. Again, that's mncatholic.org/PAS, where you'll find a toolkit, homily helps, bulletin inserts, resources about the actual bill, what it does, why it's dangerous, unnecessary, risky, why it's going to create increased disparities in healthcare delivery, why it will undermine the doctor-patient relationship, why it threatens the conscience rights and religious freedom of practitioners, and why ultimately it will endanger all of us. Protecting the choices of a few endangers the healthcare choices of everyone. Everyone has a right to receive and refuse healthcare consistent with ethical principles. What we need to do is providing better care mechanisms in public policy, finding ways that we can care for each other more effectively rather than hastening death with physician-assisted suicide. So I'd encourage everyone to go to our website, mncatholic.org/PAS. Similarly, if you want to really get involved and get in depth on the issue, you can visit the webpage of our partnership, the Minnesota Alliance for Ethical Healthcare. That website is ethicalcaremn.org. Again, that's ethicalcaremn.org. Let's keep this issue in prayer. Please come to join us at the Capitol on First Fridays for First Friday Adoration. Let's pray for our legislators. Pray that they make the important decisions that are consistent with human dignity and the common good. And let's work together to protect life from conception and natural death. Thanks for joining us on Inside the Capitol.
Thank you.